Hello, this is Sia and welcome to another video. Today we're doing another video reading Hermitcraft Genesis. We are on book 5, chapter 1, starting the next book. And this will be the last book in Hermitcraft Genesis, but not the last overall. I'll have you know. Not the finale. I don't know if there ever will be. Look, I've got an idea, but it's just that, an idea. We should get right to it then. If you haven't noticed, I don't know how many chapters I'm going to be reading at this moment, but we'll see how it goes. There are captions available if you do want to read along while I read to you. It's your choice, but yeah. Let's get right into the video. Chapter 1. The afternoon sun shone high above the grassy fields that surrounded the school. Brian leaned against the wall of the building, listening to the clash of wooden swords. "You need to lift your sword higher, Charlie. You're leaving your face exposed." 2 boys were practicing with wooden swords not far from Brian. "I'm not," the younger of the 2 boys, Charlie, protested, his bright blue eyes flashing with defiance. "You totally are." The older boy narrowed his eyes, swinging his wooden blade high. Charlie ducked underneath the incoming blade, scrambling to the left before attempting to tackle him. "Hey, that's not fair." "It is too," Charlie insisted, as the 2 of them tumbled to the ground, their swords flying harmlessly through the air before falling to the earth as well. "Liam told us to be ready for anything." "That he did," Brian agreed with a nod. The boys pulled away from their little tussle and scurried to their feet. "You did a great job there, Charlie." Charlie beamed. "It was a pretty cool move, wasn't it?" The older boy grumbled, rolling his eyes before heading over to the fallen weapons, picking them up. He still left his face exposed. "It's a start," Brian said calmly, watching the older boy offer one of the wooden swords to Charlie. "I'm going to be the best sword fighter ever." Charlie puffed out his chest, swirling his wooden blade into the air, fumbling to catch it. "Don't poke your eye out while doing that," the older boy said. "You don't want to end up in the hospital wing on the day of exams." "I know what I'm doing, Henry." "Sure you do." "I'll show you." Charlie jumped at the older boy, preparing an ambush. Henry easily blocked him as the 10-year-old boy tried to evade his defenses. Henry almost looked bored at the younger boy's attacks. "Don't be so predictable," Henry offered. Anger flashed in Charlie's eyes as the younger boy lunged again. Henry blocked and took a step back. "Remember what Liam said about losing your cool?" "I haven't lost my cool, you're just being mean." "You don't think your opponents won't?" Henry raised an eyebrow. "What do you know? You're only 12. Charlie snapped. "It doesn't mean I haven't seen what people are capable of." Henry's eyes flashed. "I saw my uncle sacrifice himself so that I could escape." "So what? It doesn't mean you could be mean to me," Charlie insisted. "Really not." Henry shrugged. "I'm not trying to be better than you or anything." "Yes, you are," Charlie grumbled. "You basically grew up here. You have an unfair advantage." "Do I now?" Henry smirked, almost playful. He stepped aside, allowing Charlie to fly past him. The younger boy hurtled to the ground. Charlie laid there for a moment before getting to his feet. "You good?" "I'm fine." Charlie scooped up his sword, poised for another attack. Henry smiled, glancing over at Brian. "How long do we have before the exam again?" "It's in an hour," Charlie stated confidently. "That might not necessarily be the case," a voice interjected. Brian looked over, spotting a tall man walking over to them. He wore the cause's camouflage uniform, his dark skin contrasting against the variety of green. His brown eyes were warm and gentle, with a hint of mystery. "What do you mean?" Charlie whirled around to face the man. "We have to take an exam to move up to the next level." I know, the man said plainly, looking at the two young boys. But I'm afraid there's too much risk right now for anyone to be out here, exam or not. Why? Henry frowned. Did Tom hear from Rose or something? The man shook his head, wiping sweat from his forehead. No one's heard from Rose in a while. Not after Carl stopped by a week ago. Brian blinked, staring at the man. He came to talk to you about Connor. Right, the man replied grimly. Did something happen? Charlie interrupted. Do we need people to go on a rescue mission? You are too young to go on any missions, Henry said doubtfully. So are you. Not really, Henry shrugged. Charlie scowled. No, there's no need for that, the man smiled. I suggest you get yourselves inside. I've already told 2 other groups that it's not safe right now to be out here. But how are we going to be practice for the exam? Charlie protested. Isn't it obvious? There is no exam, Henry said simply. But Henry is right, the man said. My team has been reporting more and more signs that we're being watched. Watched? Why? Charlie's eyes widened. We should get inside, Brian said quickly. He looked over at the men. Anything you need me to do, Tony? Keep an eye out for any kids who might try to sneak out to practice, Tony said calmly. And be available if Stacy or Lizzie need you. Brian swallowed. Has there been any word from Carl? My grandparents? Foster parents? Tony shook his head. Not yet, I'm afraid. Now you 3 should get inside and find something to do while we secure the perimeter. There may be an assembly later today. Thank you for the heads up, Henry replied, taking Charlie by the arm. The younger boy began to protest, but there wasn't much he could do to resist the 12-year-old, as the 12-year-old led him toward the front door of the school. Tony's gaze softened when he met Brian's gaze. No, it can't be easy for you, not knowing for sure, but you know what Levi said. Brian lowered his head. I know. Connor made it out. Tony put a hand on his shoulder. Connor was lucky. There's no guarantee that we'll find the answers you seek. Brian nodded. It just stinks that Connor couldn't come here. He lifted his head. I respect Carl's decision, believe me. But I haven't seen Connor since Sam and I were ambushed by Mr. A's men on our way to school. I never got to say goodbye. Tony squeezed Brian's shoulder. See if there's a way we can get you to talk to each other, if that's what you want. I'm just glad my friends are safe, Brian admitted. I feel better knowing my family was safe, too. As anyone would, Tony agreed, gesturing toward the door. We should get inside. Last thing I want to do is have to tell the Jameses that something happened to you. Brian bit his bottom lip. Capable of handling myself. Tony smiled. I know, but it can still happen. Right, Brian replied, looking toward the wall that surrounded the school. Just beyond was a forest that had been the scene where one of his best friends had been taken. He hadn't seen Liam since, even though he knew he was safe. You know, you can use the communicator in Tom's office whenever you want, Tony assured him softly. Brian looked back at him. I'll be okay. It'll only be for a little longer. I hope so, Tony sighed. The man looked exhausted, as if something heavy was weighing him down. A lot of things have happened. With Rose no longer ahead of the cause, and the cause itself fracturing. It's bad, Brian finished. Tony nodded grimly. The 2 of them said nothing more as they walked toward the front door. There was a lot of work to do. Part of that was keeping whatever was left of the students here safe, now that most of the older teens became interns, moving away from the school. They were safe, at least. He hoped so. But there were still kids like Charlie and Henry who needed all the help they could get. Something happened. Would something happen? Brian wasn't sure, He'd be there to help if it was needed. Chapter 2. Can I help you with those books, Stacy? Brian crossed the hall when he spotted his friend, a woman in her 30s with dark brown hair and forest green eyes. She and Lizzie were the two YouTubers who stayed at the school. For both protection and help with the kids who needed it, when needed. Stacy, excuse me. Stacy was carrying a large stack of books in her arms, and she smiled at the young man approaching. Oh no, I think I'll be fine, thank you, Stacy said, shaking her head. I just finished for the day and need to get these books back to my room upstairs. You sure you don't need help? Brian insisted, raising an eyebrow. It's 2 flights of stairs. Or a trip up the elevator, she smirked. Brian sighed, unable to hide a smile. That's fair. Can I at least walk with you? I need to talk to you anyway. Me? Stacy said curiously, but didn't object to his offer as they walked down the hall toward the staircase. Did something happen? Not as far as I know, Brian replied. But that doesn't mean people aren't nervous. There's been some hints that the school is being watched. Watched? Stacy's eye had widened. Are you sure that it wasn't from a couple of months ago? There were abandoned camps scattered around the school when my wolf scouted the place last week. Oh no, Brian shrugged. Tony seems to think it's something concerning, though, to stop the kids from practicing outside. Oh, she said softly, her brow furrowing as she began their ascent up the stairs. I'm sure it'll be fine, right? We don't have as many kids here than we did 2 months ago, Brian reminded her. We do have the bunker. We do, Brian replied. But it's weird, don't you think? Carl didn't want to bring Connor here because he was worried it wouldn't be safe for him and the 2 other kids with him. How many more kids have been found and taken to safe houses before then instead of here? Since then? I don't know. But I can let Everest know to keep an eye out for any possible intruders, Stacy said simply. The last thing we need is for the doctor to go after the kids. Brian frowned. What you want with the kids? I get it with you and Lizzie, and even myself, but these kids haven't done anything to cause trouble. Who knows? Stacy sighed, arriving at the top of the 3rd floor. Brian followed her. She could be looking for new recruits. It's not like it hasn't happened before. All right, Brian agreed, jogging ahead to open the bedroom door for the YouTuber. Stacy smiled and nodded her thanks as she entered the room, putting the books on the desk in the corner. Need anything else? No, this should be good. Thank you, Stacy replied, patting the books on the desk. Brian could see a dog bed just behind the normal bed, while the wolves appeared to be taking a nap. He could see huge white paws in the hint of a white tail. Tony said there's a chance we might have an assembly later. Brian added quickly, things might be changing. Stacy frowned. Surely it can't be that bad. It's not good either, Brian admitted. I wouldn't be surprised if town decided to relocate the kids to other safe houses for the time being. Her eyes widened. You think it would come to that? It's not worth the risk. All right, she sighed, her eyes wavering to the window for a moment. Just hope everyone's okay. Me too, Brian said, still standing in the hallway. I haven't seen my friends for months. I just want it all to be over. It'll happen, she said, her eyes flashing with defiant confidence. That woman can't keep it up forever. Brian hoped she was right. He wanted her to be right. But when would it happen? Would it be truly over if they captured Ransdown? Or was the cause too fractured to do even that right? Time would tell. Another chapter? Shall we? We're almost approaching a cliffhanger point. Careful. Approach at your own risk. Hours had passed since Brian had gotten the warning from the Tony. He sat on one of the couches in the main room, which was far from empty. Indistinct chatter came from small groups of children, all under the age of 13. Teachers stood by the entranceways and doors, talking quietly with one another. The atmosphere heavy with tension as people waited for an answer. Brian knew Tom, Tony, and a few other high-ranking protectors were upstairs now, discussing their options. Was it safe to keep the kids here? There were about 20 children in total in the room. Many he recognized from classes he shared or helped teach. Henry and Charlie were huddled in a corner, with a small group of boys. Brian watched the group silently as Charlie took the spotlight, spinning a story that was drowned out by the chatter. At least that was what Brian suspected by the gleam in the 10-year-old's eyes. "You mind if we stay with you?" a voice spoke, pulling Brian away from the throng of voices. He turned, seeing the young girls next to the couch, 12, 10, respectively. "No, of course they don't mind." Brian quickly scooted over to give the girls more room. "Summer and rain, is it?" He remembered. The older girl, Summer, smiled. She was pretty, her curly brown hair woven into a French braid. She pulled her younger sister onto her lap. "Of course," Brian replied. "You are the most recent arrivals." "That was months ago." Summer shook her head. "Surely there'd be more kids coming in." "Daddy always said the school was packed," Rain mumbled, quietly, avoiding Brian's gaze. "Yeah," Brian agreed. "It usually is, due to all the raids." Sad look glimmered in Summer's piercing blue eyes. She pulled her sister into a hug. "Do you think they're still happening?" "I don't see why not," Brian replied. Summer nodded slowly, just as the door opened. Brian looked over in time to see Tom walk into the room, Tony right behind him. As the room grew quiet, Tom walked over to the large window up front, allowing the afternoon sunlight to cast a spotlight over him. Brian could see the forest through the window, dense and dark. Tom cleared his throat as Brian felt Rain squirm to sit beside him. "Oh, now you want to talk!" "I'm sure you heard some whispers going around today," Tom said calmly, his voice gentle like a stream. "From what I could gather, things are indeed changing, and sometimes we have to make tough decisions to keep those in our care safe." "Let us fight!" Charlie jumped to his feet, pumping his fist in the air. Henry reached for his arm, trying to pull him back down, but Charlie shook his hand away. "We showed them once, we can do it again." Tom smiled sadly at the boy. I admire your enthusiasm, Charles, but unlike last time, the threat is larger than ever before. We are hardly an army as it is, with almost all the older students taking internships around the universe. We can't take a risk putting any of you children in danger, if our reports are correct. "What reports? What's going on?" another kid demanded, causing a couple of children to exclaim in agreement. Tom sighed, running her hand through his smooth, straight hair. "I'm afraid that's classified. You are much too young to be concerned with." "Try us!" Charlie protested. Henry sprung to his feet, grabbing the boy's arm. "What do you think you're doing?" the older boy asked. Charlie continued. "We've been through a lot already. Raids, attacks, ambushes. We've had to deal with Mr. A's men, Campbell's men, and more. We've dealt with troublesome, corrupt adults and well-meaning caregivers. What's stopping us from fighting? The YouTubers are doing it. They are far more experienced with these troubles than anyone in this room," Tony replied matter-of-factly. "So? They were willing to help us before, so why not now?" Another kid got to his feet. "It's far too dangerous to stay here," Tony said plainly. There have been hundreds more towns that have been attacked and destroyed than usual. Hundreds more towns that have been attacked and destroyed than usual. Not sure I said that correctly. We rarely see any survivors, which could mean either there are none, or this new leader has taken them. Taken them? Rain asked softly. Brian glanced over, seeing a spark of fear in her eyes. They took Daddy? Shh, I won't let them take you, Summer said gently, stroking the younger girl's head. Rain scooted closer to his sister, her body trembling as Tom went on. Some of you may recall that Carl was here a week ago. He approached me with concerns about the security of the school. He felt it would be wise to relocate the children to other safe houses for their protection. You don't need protection, Charlie scowled. We want to help. Isn't that what we've been training for? You're 10, Henry glared at the younger boy. Any soldier would squish you like a bug. Says you, Charlie snapped, his eyes pleading to Tom. Please, isn't there anything we can do? We've been preparing for months. You can't just send us away and expect us to do nothing. If you were older, I would consider it, Tom said. But, if I recall, you've only been training for 6 months. And Sam only needed, what, a week? And look where he's at, protecting the most hated YouTuber ever! Brian winced as Tony cleared his throat. Sam, unfortunately, didn't have much of a choice. We had tried to give him aid in the past, but yes, those rumors made that difficult. Yeah, and Liam went to be a protector too, another kid responded. Why couldn't you let some of us who've been here for years become interns? Why 13? Tom shook his head. It's not my decision, I'm afraid. But Tony and I have had a long discussion about what to do about the current risks just outside our borders. We're unable to call for help. Our communications have been disconnected. Disconnected? A gasp filled the quiet room. Brian looked over to see Lizzie and Stacy walking into the room. At their heels were 2 large Arctic wolves. Lizzie stood frozen in the door. Her ocean blue eyes were wide near the door. Her ocean blue eyes wide with alarm. I'm afraid so, Tony replied. Something has blocked our signal every time. Redstoners are hard at work looking into it. Brian saw one of the older teachers nod in affirmation. He wore a slim lab coat, which was splatters of color staining the fabric. Brian was fairly certain they were from potions, not paint. How long? Stacy frowned, her brows furrowing. Everest had the wolves scat around the perimeter an hour ago. I didn't find anything suspicious. They're smart not to leave any potential scent trail, Tony said. His eyes met the YouTubers. They know how good your wolves are. They've been able to outsmart them before. Right. Stacy lowered her head. Is there nothing we can do? Lizzie asked. I'm afraid not, Tom said, his tone thick with disappointment. It's too much risk to have anyone here. We need to evacuate all children and YouTubers immediately before the night's out. You can't do this, Charlie exclaimed. We're not leaving. Yes, you are, Tony said, narrowing his eyes. That is not a suggestion. We're doing this for your safety. Charlie opened his mouth to protest, but Tom beat him to it. I know you want to help, Charlie. I'm sure many of you want to pitch in as well. And I don't blame you after what you have gone through. With the attack 2 months ago, and the constant danger of the outside world. But some of you who do have parents or guardians, you know that they wouldn't want you to be put in unnecessary danger if it could be avoided. I'm sure you can understand that. Charlie stood frozen, his eyes slowly moving to the ground. Can't we help? There may be a way, Tony offered, if the opportunity arises. But in the meantime, the best thing you can do is to be safe. Safe, Charlie muttered aloud. Whatever. You gonna do it? Or are you gonna be funny? Okay. You're gonna be funny. There we are. I had the wrong aloud. You can believe it? You said this place would be safe for us. It's meant to be, Tony said solemnly. But times are changing. And sometimes we have to make the tough decisions too. Brian gasped as the ceiling broke away, smashing to pieces as something hurtled to the ground. Before he knew it, he was thrust backward against the couch by a force heavier than 1,000 anvils. He coughed and groaned, trying to regain his breath as he blinked away tears and floating debris. A scream broke the air as someone rose up from the debris, holding a large mace with both hands. Tom lay crumpled on the floor, half buried into the wood, his hair soaked with dark red. Just gonna leave it at that. Tony was a few feet away from him, winded as he looked up at the uniformed man in front of him. You're not one of ours, Tony wheezed. The man smiled, most of his face covered by a black mask, stormy gray eyes gleaming with pleasure. You're right, Anthony. I'm not. Figure out who that is yet? If you haven't figured it out now. Nettie pretty much spoiled it in Unforeseen Danger. Yeah, it's Big B. Big B's dad's also known as Anthony. Yep. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. Get that could have been obvious. I did say that you might have played a part in this perspective. So, yeah. No, I think I should stop here. It's a good spot to stop. And then next week we can go on to chapter 4 and all that stuff. This book has 19 chapters, including an epilogue, so we'll see how long that takes. If I do the epilogue included with the books or separately, you guys can let me know which one you would prefer, because it's not the same perspective. And even as I'm reading these, I might change things along the way, so I have no idea. But I do have a story here. Yeah. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Yeah. And that you've had fun listening to the story. And if you want to see more, there is a playlist down in the description that you can check out. Or you can check out the next video whenever it goes up. Like, it will be in the description, as they all are now, because I updated them. I had everything up to Marvel's Wonder, but I never did it for Hermitcraft Genesis. And I'm like, why did I not do that? Makes sense. Well, I did do that now, so let's take care of. But, yeah. Have fun. And I'll see you guys next week. Bye.